I would like to call the March 12th Nashua Board of Education meeting to order. It is 7:05, and we are at the Nashua High School North Lecture Hall. Could the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Mosher?
I'm here.
Mrs. Oden?
Here.
Mr. Kaufman?
Here.
Ms. Raymond? Not here. Ms. Timmons?
Here.
Ms. Hohensee?
Here.
Mr. Garino is here. We have a quorum. Other attendees, Dr. Mosley is here.
Sorry, here.
That's okay. Dr. McKinney? Ms. Fitzpatrick?
Here.
Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mr. Gillis?
Here.
And also we have other people with us. Could you please introduce yourself?
Joe Manzoli from the YMCA.
And I'm Gail Casey, representing 21st Century Programs.
Okay, and Mr. Mosher is here. Mr. Mosher, can you hear us?
I certainly can, loud and clear.
And is anybody in the room with you?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, yep. Okay, could we have Mr. Garino will read the prayer, and could Mr. Kaufman please lead us in the pledge?
Please stand. Almighty God, we have the high honor and the serious duty of managing the educational institutions of our beloved city. In our common endeavors, may we find a spirit of unity and understanding which will enable us to face our multiple problems with an objective mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will be for the betterment and greater happiness of all of our fellow citizens. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. And tonight we have a presentation. Gail Casey is here, and the gentleman from the YMCA.
Joe Mazzoli.
Thank you. And they're going to give us a presentation. It's called Closing the Achievement Gap for Summer Schools. So I'm going to turn the program over to you at this point.
Okay. So I wanted to give folks a little bit of background on the development of this programming. Starting last fall, we began meeting to discuss restructuring summer programming to serve the most students with the greatest need more effectively. That was our goal. In December, we started to meet as a committee. We had done conversations, but then we actually formed a committee to look at all the programming district-wide and decide what steps we could take to improve the current model. Another part of those meetings was how to serve students and be as fiscally responsible as possible. And to that end, one of the people that participated in our committee was Dan Donovan. And the other folks on the committee were Gail Casey, Joe Manzoli, Bob Chopa representing ELL, Cynthia Prue, who is here tonight representing Title I, Lori Rothaus, who does adult ed and credit recovery, who's with us, and Mike McQuilkin, who does summer school, and Kim Craffey and Ann Rice, who do special education. Dr. McKinney attended, and also me. So it was a well-rounded committee, and everyone who has summer programming was represented. We worked together to build a comprehensive plan, and that included looking at the budgeting for the summer programs. And as part of the redesign, teachers that are interested in applying, so this is a little PSA, who are interested in applying for a position will find instructions for applications on the district website. Each program will have a little bit different format, but all of the information will be found on one spot on the website. Excuse me. After we felt like we had a comprehensive plan, we invited Dr. Mosley to a meeting, and we proposed our plan to him, and he gave us some feedback. We did a little bit more work on the program, and then we put something together we feel very good about. We feel like it's going to serve a lot of students well. And the PowerPoint you're about to see is just an overview of the hours of planning and collaboration that took place, and it's represented by a few comprehensive slides. If you have questions, could you please save them until the end of the PowerPoint? There's people here that can answer specific questions, but we'd like to do the PowerPoint before we get questions. Thank you. Gail?
All right. So we called it the summer program Closing the Achievement Gap because that was an overarching goal for all of the programs. We talked about goals across the board, and so one of the big ones is reducing summer learning loss. Children from low-income households lose about 2.5 months of reading and math in the summer on average. Our statistics are coming from the Bell Foundation, so if you look on the bottom of the screen, there's some information about where to look at some of that data. We wanted to look at school engagement, really build some confidence with our students so that they feel engaged during the school day. We wanted to look at social and emotional growth, how we can support students during the summer so that they're more prepared for the fall. We wanted to work towards more connections in our community, so looking at partnerships in Nashua and seeing, what are some of the resources that have been gone underutilized in the past. And then another important part of this was making it really clear for families. There's in the past, a lot of different program options for families, and we wanted to streamline some of that so that parents could make some clear decisions about what they wanted to do with their children over the summer. And then, of course, we wanted it to be fun, so that's a big part of our program. This is something that was put together to show what services are being offered across the district. So you see Blastoff to kindergarten that's the students who are going into kindergarten, and that takes place in their schools. We'll learn a little bit more about that. ELL is district-wide. Special ed is also district-wide. The PowerScholar Academy is representing elementary school youth and middle school youth. And then course recovery is for high school students. Oh, and I want to point out, about over 1,300 students will be receiving services over the summer. So the first slide has to do with ELL. It's really pretty similar year to year. We talked about, it'll be held at Ledge Street School, grades K through 5, serving 200 students. In the middle and the high school, it'll be taking place at Nashua High South. So you can see grades 6 through 12, students receiving direct instruction in ELL, as well as grades 10 and 12, ELL peer mentors with ELL WIDA proficiency, level 4 up, serving 100 students. One of the things that we talked about is looking at students who may fall into one or more categories. So if we have an elementary school student who it might make sense for them to participate in the PowerScholar Academy, then that's something that's part of the referral process. And that way we can make sure that students are in the correct program or invited to participate in the correct summer program. The desired outcomes are to reduce literacy loss over the summer, improve English language skills in all 4 domains through sheltered content instruction, an introduction into American educational system. So some of these students, it's the first time that they're going to be in school in the United States. Orientation to the Nashua schools for ELL newcomers. And again, a lot of that has to do with making sure that families know what their options are. And so a lot of attention is paid to the whole family. For special education summer programs, similarly to last year, there'll be a preschool program at Broad Street Elementary, serving about 65 to 75 preschool students. An elementary school program held at Nashua High South. Nope, that's a typo. The elementary school program is actually going to be held at Amherst Street Elementary for special ed, grades K through 5, serving 185 to 195 students. And then the middle and high school programs will be held at Nashua High South. The desired outcomes for special education summer programs are to provide various therapies based on IEPs, tutoring in reading and math, reducing regression for students, and increasing readiness to learn for the younger students. Again, similarly to last year, the Blastoff to Kindergarten program is really working to help the incoming kindergartners be ready for the school year. A big part of that is making sure that they have access to their elementary school, and so you can see the 5 Title I schools are listed, and at each one of the Title I schools, Students will be able to have their summer learning right in the school that they'll be in the fall, and that speaks to their ability to feel comfortable in the fall. So it was really important that we were able to continue to do that. The outcomes from the Blast After Kindergarten program are that students will recognize their name. They'll know how to count to 5 or higher. Students will count to 101 correspondence to 5 or higher. They'll recognize at least 5 letters out of the 26 in the alphabet. Students will recognize parts of books and answer comprehension questions. And parents and guardians will gain knowledge regarding school and community resources. Again, when we're looking at summer learning loss, it's important that we look at the whole family. And so by making sure we're building relationships with the parents in the summer, we'll be able to make sure that they're ready for the fall. The Summer School Comprehensive Course Recovery Program, similarly to summers in the past, is run by Lori Rothaus. It's going from July 5th to August 1st. The goal of the summer school program is to increase academic support for struggling students and provide another graduation pathway. 15 courses that fulfill graduation requirements. You see the examples listed. Students receive a failing grade in a course are eligible for recovery in the summer, and that's all high school grades. And then the summer program is aligned with state standards, and the cost is $150 per class for each student. Again, they're aligned with state or national standards. They're aligned with our academic expectations. So we want our students who are participating in this program to be able to read, write, listen, and speak proficiently, exhibit critical thinking and problem-solving skills, demonstrate effective communication skills, acquire and evaluate information, use resources to obtain information and make connections to real-world learning, exhibit 21st century literacy and technology skills, and promote our core values of respect, responsibility, character, courage, and trustworthiness. Summer competency, which is different than course recovery. This program runs from July 9th to August 1st. The competency courses include math, science, English, social studies, world languages, health, and physical education. Plato online learning courses are also offered throughout the summer, and the cost for competency recovery is $50 per competency. Again, Lori Rothaus will be managing the programs for the high schools, and she is here tonight to answer any questions at the end of the presentation. Go with this one, and then I'll give it to you.
Sure.
So the PowerScholar Academy, this is the biggest change for the summer school program. What we did was we looked at what was offered for the elementary school and middle school youth, and we took the best parts of each program, we think, after meeting with all of the people who've been offering these programs, and we rolled them into one comprehensive program. So Joe Manzoli is the COO at the YMCA of Greater Nashua, and he is familiar with the PowerScholar Academy, and he will be presenting on what the plan is moving forward.
Great, thank you, good evening. A quick history, over the last 3 summers, the Y has partnered with the school district to run a summer learning loss prevention program that was literacy focused for grades 1 and 2. We've had great success with that program. On average, kids have gained 3 to 4 months of reading each summer. But in our conversations with the district about this summer, we wanted to see if we could do more. And so the YMCA of the USA created this program, PowerScholar Academy, in partnership with BELL, an organization called BELL, which stands for Building Educated Leaders for Life. And in this program, the outcomes were the same in the literacy component, but there's also a math component, and we'll get to those outcomes in a little bit. But just some overview for the program. We're going to be serving students from entering grades 1 through grade 8. It's a 5-week program. We're going to operate full day. So this program is going to go from 8:30 to 3:30. It's going to include transportation, breakfast, and lunch for all of the students that we'll be serving. The focus for this program nationally and here locally will be for students who are coming to us from lower income households who are below grade level in reading and or math, that are on the bubble, that a program like this can help them get back to where they need to be. Gail shared that statistic earlier that students from low income households on average fall behind by 2.5 months in the summer, and that's cumulative. So that happens every summer. And so as kids get older, they're falling further and further behind. They come back to school and their teachers do a great job with them. But this program is designed to keep them engaged in the summer and not only stop that loss, but help them get back towards grade level. So that's who we're going to be focusing on. And we're able to do that with small ratios. So we're going to be operating with a 12-to-1 ratio of staff from students to staff. A typical day, and this just came out to you in the folders that were just handed out, but the day is broken down into two different times. The academic time will be focused on literacy and math. We'll be hiring certified teachers from throughout the district to help us run this part of the program. The curriculum itself is designed through Scholastic, and every year the YMCA of the USA works with Bell to review that curriculum. So they'll look at the results from last summer, they'll make tweaks where they need to, and then when it comes time, we'll be ordering that curriculum based on the needs of the students that we have registered for the program. So it's highly specialized, and it's aligned with Common Core. In the afternoon, we want to keep those kids engaged, and so you'll see some of the activities that we'll be offering during that time, and wherever we can, we're going to tie the work back. So if the students are reading about something in the morning, their art project in the afternoon will be tied back to that, so there's always that connection. We'll be offering swimming, both recreational swimming and swim lessons for students who need that. There'll be leadership development, character development, and starting particularly with the middle school students, looking at college and career readiness. Part of the reason that we're going to be running the middle school program out of the high school is for those kids to start thinking about their next steps. These are the national outcomes. So this program has been run, last summer was run in 91 different sites around the country, serving about 7,500 students. And these are the national averages of a month and a half. So again, if you remember that on average, these students may experience a 2.5-month loss. When we see these month-and-a-half gain in reading and 2-month increase in math, that's a pretty wide swing. We also see some of these other statistics based on the feedback from both parents and teachers, that 90% of the scholars in the program are more confident in their abilities. 86% see an improved ability to overcome challenges. That idea of grit is so important for these students. 89% of the teachers that work in the PowerScholars say that working with PowerScholars Academy helped them develop their professional skills. And then 96% of the parents say scholars enjoyed PowerScholars Academy. And we want the kids to have fun. We want them to be able to come, get engaged, and start to see school as something that they're excited about. And we believe, and we've seen in our past work, that those students go back to school excited to go back and learn. So we'd like to share a video with you that really gives you an idea of what PowerScholars Academy is all about.
PowerScholars is an amazing collaboration between Bell and the YMCA. The mission of both organizations, of Bell and of the YMCA, have come together to create a powerful program model that allows scholars to become great leaders, developing skills that will stay with them for a lifelong adventure and journey.
That I can achieve what I want to do, like my dreams are possible. Like they helped me get to where I wanted to go, and there wasn't a time where I felt stuck being with PowerScholars. It was always, you know, I can do it, like there's always power. So they make a big, like, warming community.
They tell me that I could change the world, and I really want to change the world. And they make me feel like I'm someone, and I really am.
I've seen so much growth in my son, and he's a little quiet, but I've noticed he started talking more. He's telling more stories, and I just want him to be somebody. And PowerScholars is teaching him to be a leader.
Reminder that our children are not receiving the same educational opportunities, and therefore their career paths and their life paths are very different. So if we are in fact going to change the future, and we know that our children, our scholars are going to be a part of that future, we have to create opportunities for them to close any opportunity and learning gaps, as well as design and prepare them for the future that they are going to be a part of.
Our scholars are definitely learning. They're becoming better leaders already, and they're definitely giving the tools that they need to survive.
We know that children will be more effective if there's a holistic approach to their upbringing, including exercise and nutrition, but also the academic portion. So in terms of our priority in the YMCA for youth development, this just comes together to really, again, help those children get out of the situation in some cases they're in, improve their scores in school, graduate from high school, and go on to further training and successful lives.
Rather than face the regression that occurs in some scholars over the summer, we're closing that gap, and we're very thankful for that.
You know, PowerScholars they're nice, and they help you with your education, and they want you to succeed in life. They don't want you to be, they want you to be high instead of on the low. So.
I am a scholar.
I am the future.
I am intelligent. I am unique. When the time comes, I will be a leader.
When there is injustice, I will take a stand.
I will be ambitious.
Because I am
and always will be
a power scholar.
An educated leader for life.
I was just looking over at Gail to see if she was crying. She said she
handle this.
she cries when she sees that.
Looks so cute.
So we're excited about that program. Just in terms of next steps and some of the logistics, the funding.
I am a scholar.
Do you guys want to watch it again?
I am a scholar. I'm a scholar.
Just pause you. I can't handle more.
It goes on. So what happens is some of the other YMCAs around the country end up making their own videos. But the cost for this program, we've looked, and Dan was so helpful in looking at what's been spent. We're not looking to spend more money. So what has been spent on summer programs in the past, along with some funding from the YMCA, and you can see up there where the funding for this will come. So it's based on the spending that we've seen in previous summers. For the PowerScholars Academy, the teachers and the assistants and the enrichment staff will be hired and trained by the YMCA. The leaders for that program, so we'll have site directors that are currently members of the 21st Century staff. They'll be going to a leadership training in Dallas next month. And then all of the teachers and enrichment staff will provide 20 hours of training time prior to the summer, and then ongoing training during the summer. So it's very similar to what we have been doing on a much smaller scale with the Summer Learning Loss Prevention Program that we've run at Ledge Street and Dr. Crisp the last few summers. So from here, the next steps, the district is preparing an announcement to go out to employees, press release from the school district along with the YMCA to announce this, and then the process will begin very shortly. The district's already been getting questions about summer options, and so registration of the scholars will begin soon, hopefully. I think it just goes to questions.
Hey.
So at this point, if people have questions, we're happy to entertain them.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm impressed by the breadth of what you're trying to do and how you've touched, the academics as well as the fun part, and the fact that we're hearing, at least I'm hearing, that meals and transportation are included. That's always a big issue to get participation. So it sounds like you got the bases covered, but I do have a couple of questions. I understand, I'm just curious about this. Children from low-income households lose 2.5 months of reading and math on the summer average, and you cited 2 studies. If I read the footnote correctly, one of them is from 2003 and one of them is 2011. So and this is national data, it's not local data?
That's correct.
So what do we have for local data? If you've been running this program or something similar to it over the last couple of years, do you have local data that shows your local results?
What we have is our local results of the kids who are in that program, so we don't have the results of kids who weren't in the program and what they may have experienced for loss. But in our summer learning loss program, we've had, and it's been different for different grades, so our first graders last summer, and I don't have the data at my fingertips, but it was close to a year. We had kids who were coming in, going into first grade, who were reading at about a halfway through kindergarten grade level, and when they finished, they were close to midway through first grade. Our second graders wasn't quite as dramatic, but still better than the national average. I think we were about 4 or 5 months of gain with those kids. So we've seen that the program certainly increases, that particular program, and again, this is the results nationally are the same for literacy as they are with the program we've been running, but it now adds the math component, and so they're seeing nationally a gain of 2 months in math. I've spoken with YMCAs who are partnering with school districts in the region, so New Bedford, Manchester, and some others in the Boston area, and they've seen even greater results.
I don't doubt that at all. I think when kids get the attention that they need and it's zeroed in on what their needs are, they're just going to leave everybody in the dust. Mm-hmm. So, but I would say to you, if you come back next year and present this, I want to know what's going on here.
Okay.
I personally don't care about national data. I know you're testing, you have to be testing to get them in there to give them the correct curriculum, and I know you want to test them when they come out. Mm-hmm. So that would be where I would ask you to emphasize, and because what you just shared with me is what I really want to hear. I really don't care about a study from 2003 or 2011 is now 6, 7 years old. So, but the other question I have has to do with the selection of students. So if I understood, at least later on when you get into the summer school programs, preschool, these are largely from economically disadvantaged families. Is that correct?
So well, it depends. So the Blastoff Program is for Title I schools because they are students that would be going to those schools in the fall. Special ed, and ELL, they have limited space, I believe, in their summer programs, and so we've talked about going through the referral process for both Power Scholars and then comparing that list of students to the list of students on Mr. Chopa's referral list as well, so that we can identify, there may be a student who's an ELL student, but they're proficient enough and would be successful in the PowerScholar Academy as well. And that way we can really make sure that we're, especially with the ELL population in the district, we want to make sure we're paying attention to those numbers and getting them so they can pass that access test in the fall.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to ask you about with ELL, because if I remember correctly, Mr. Chopa's presentation, there are between 1,200 and 1,300 students
Right.
that are in
That's exactly right.
ELL world, I'll just call it that. Yes. And it's closer to 1,300 if I remember correctly. So this is only 100 students. So
when you say this is only 100 students.
The ELL, if you can go to your slide.
Correct, yep. So ELL has 100 students, and then when we look at the Power Scholars Academy, it would be 360 students from 2 elementary school sites with 120 students at each, and then a middle school site with another 120. And that's our capacity at this time. But I think the other part of this is the referral process. When we looked at programs from summers in the past, and we asked the question, like, who are the students that were gaining access to these summer programs, it was really a mix. The referral process was not based that we could find with any sort of data points. It was really based at the discretion of the teachers and the principals, and they would know, right? But we wanted to be more intentional with the students that we're inviting to participate in this program. And so we're going through and identifying, what are the indicators that will make a student from the Nashua School District who's struggling, who isn't on grade level. How can we identify those students who really do need the academic support and get them on grade level, and then alleviate some of the resources that would have gone to those students in the fall. If we get students on grade level, that really will support the rest of the district, and that those resources can then be provided to students who need them.
So I don't want
Thank
to
you.
take,
Yeah,
I do have some
sure.
other questions.
Okay. Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. And thank you for this presentation. I've been on the board for 2 years, and the program's been going on for 3, so I'm delighted that we're hearing about it. I think it's excellent. It's, I guess, what many of us board members had hoped that the district would be doing. So I'm delighted that we're getting the combination of academics and fun from the summer, exercise, and all those things the kids need to do being kids. I'm wondering about the transportation. Is that district provided, or does that go, the YMCA doesn't have a system of transportation and buses?
Can we go ahead? So I met with transportation, and I said, this is what we need to do. How can we do this? And so parts of it were already covered in budgets for the summer programs in the past. We did have to find additional funding to support adding another tier. So because our program was a full-day program, we had to pay to have them come back out. And that cost is going to be covered between, like 21st Century, we run a summer program. We used to run a summer program. This is all rolled in now. And so that gives us some flexibility with how we want to spend our dollars. And so we can cover that cost with the resources available to us.
Thank you, that's excellent. And you pick up the kids at home, not at their local school, so it's
Correct.
just like it is during the year. This is fabulous. Thank you for coming, and thank you for the presentation.
Dr. Mosley?
I just wanted to clarify a couple things. Just briefly, can you describe what the programs looked like last year?
Yeah,
And I'm not just talking about your program, I'm talking about all the programs, including in the district. And then when you juxtaposition that, you'll see there's that difference you are referencing, Mrs. Hohensee. So can briefly describe what was going on last year in terms of the replication of services, overlap, and a little bit of kind of everyone doing their own thing. And we can talk a little bit more about the difference now,
Okay.
briefly.
All right, I know, we could go on for days. So I will start by saying that we were in a really unique position last year because our new leadership in the district began in the summer. And so one of the things I think that really spearheaded this was that our leadership really came through and said, what's happening here? Last year was my first summer as well, so looking at it as from a program sort of lens, I was saying, I think we can do better. I believe, and Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there were 32 different programs run across the district, 32. And that means that all of our resources, when it came to transportation or food services or field trips, they're really spread pretty thin when you are spreading it across 32 different programs. There was a lot of value in those programs, and so we spent a lot of time asking people, what's your favorite part about what you're doing in the summer? And then we tried to take that information and roll it into what we're providing now. In the elementary schools, there was a Summer Sizzlers program that had been going on for 4 years. And after the Summer Sizzlers program, there was a 21st Century program that we ran that was the enrichment part. I didn't understand this in the beginning, but as I got into summer, I realized that the kids were not the same. Students who were coming for the first half of the day were not the same students who were coming to 21st Century in the second half of the day. And when you looked at the demographic, the students who needed academic support, I felt, those were not the students enrolled in summer school. And so when you look at this and you say, okay, if the goal of summer school program is to bridge this achievement gap, we're not getting the kids that need to be here into the school. And so that was a big concern, at least for the elementary school programs. There was another, the Bridge program was a great program that was for 6th grade students. And it was great for our 21st century kids because they would, graduate 5th grade and they'd go to the bridge program, and then we'd say, you guys can still come back after your bridge program and come and join 21st century afterwards. So it was nice. We knew we wanted to keep a middle school program, but you've got the bridge program that's for incoming 6th graders, and then we had the CTE programs. It was called the Kickstart program, and that was for 7th and 8th graders, and that program was really focused on providing students with access and knowledge about the CTE programs in the high school. After doing more research, we learned that those students won't necessarily have access to participate in those programs until their 10th grade. And so you're showing these 7th and 8th graders a program that they don't have access to until they get into 10th grade, which isn't a bad thing, but maybe not like the focus of a summer program. So again, we looked at all of these programs. I'm trying to be as brief as possible. And we said, okay, what are the best parts of this? And so, and having the students in the middle school in that program, having 6th through 8th grade, having a real target audience, and having a very focused, intentional program, we're still able to, by having it in the high school, show them the CTE programs. We're not losing any of that. We're still going to be able to talk to the 6th graders about what it means to be in the middle school. So I think in having conversations with folks that have been doing this for years, and looking at, what's the best part of what you're doing in the summer, we were able to pull all of that into what we want to do now.
And so just to kind of add to that, so last year you were offering the program just at the elementary school, correct?
There were various programs. There were 2 at the middle schools, and 21st Century was only offered at the elementary schools. So.
And this year it's different.
This year we'll be offering a full day program. It won't be so fragmented. Mm-hmm. So the PowerScholar Academy, it's one program. You either are coming to our one program or you're not. It's not, parents would have to, on one form, it may have 3 different pieces of information, so I think for families it'll be a lot easier. We didn't put this in the slide, but there's no cost for the students for this program. So
and there was a cost for Summer Sizzlers.
Mm-hmm. So the cost for Summer Sizzlers last year, that was a little bit of a hindrance, or could potentially be a hindrance for some of our families that can't afford that cost. And this year, it's actually offering when they're identified free of charge. So that's another change. I think the other piece to this too is that there's a collaboration here between the school, 21st Century, and the Y, and that didn't exist. What I'm really pleased about is that the fact that the program there's some consistency from the elementary school into the middle school, and I think we could, if this all works out, I'd love to expand the program for summer school, particularly at our middle school. So our young, I'd say the 12, 13, 14-ish young individuals have a place to go, and I think we strategically placed it at the south because we want our kids to be able to access the YMCA pool during the summertime. I think it's imperative that there's a social emotional piece. There's something that I think our kids should take away in addition to the academic that's just as important. And I think if I can just say that, I think it's important that these kids that we're targeting learn how to, they get the social pieces, they get the academics, but they also learn some life skills. And I think what's embedded in the fund is that they learn how to be part of the community, and they learn some real hands-on skills. So I am very, very pleased with the work that the 3 of you have done. And the swimming part, I think by far, I want every kid in this program to learn and understand the importance of swimming. And I know that seems kind of pedestrian in a way, but in some way, I think it's important that every single kid learn how to swim. And that's a lifelong skill you'll need for the rest of your life, in addition to reading and writing. Thank you.
Mr. Greeno?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to say congratulations. I'm all for finding out what those barriers to participation are, and then getting and overcoming those barriers. And I think you've been successful at that. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And it sounds like that's what you're working on. Find out why. You have all these programs and who they're reaching, and there may be students out there that aren't participating. Doesn't matter what their background is, but they need it, and you're getting them in the program. And I think that's what's important. So thank you very much.
Mr. Mosher, do you have anything?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I've been sitting here quietly and listening to the whole thing. and I've been making some comparisons to what we did back in 1940 compared to what we're doing today. And it seems that today we have a lot of good programs. I'm fascinated with this one. And I know that getting children to learn is sometimes very difficult. Having been involved in adult ed myself, and knowing that the adults are like the kids but only bigger, and knowing that we have some some of these programs are very good. But what I'd like to see is fresh data from more recent times, and from districts with about the same size and demographics that we experience here, and show the results as they may be, and this way we would be able to have the information that we need on implementation, because we are a community of only about 80,000 or 85,000 people, and we may not have as many children as this program may require. So I'd like to see more data, to validate the program, not just anybody can have a program. You throw money at it, it's going to work. But this is something else. We need some more information on this, at least to satisfy me. So thank you. Very well done and a very interesting program. But I'd like to see more information on it, especially the demographics and the district are about the same size as ours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mosher. I have a question on the PowerScholar Academy. I know you said it's a 12-to-1 ratio. How many students are in that? How many students how many slots do you have for students?
We're looking at 360. So it'll be a 24-to-2 ratio. So each classroom size will be 24 students with 2 staff in each classroom.
Well, that's amazing.
So it'll be 120 students at each of the schools.
Oh, great. And you're saying it's a 1 to 5 month increase in reading grade level, what they've seen in some of the programs. What do they use for a benchmark in that? Are they using Fontes and Pinnell or?
They use the STAR assessment,
Okay.
which some local school districts use. And so there'll be an assessment that's done during the first week of the program, and then again during the last week. And that's where we get that data.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzpatrick?
In terms of data, I think that one of the concerns we had about the previous summer programming was that because there were so many programs and they were so varied, it was very difficult to gather data on student success. So our plan moving forward is to collect the data over the summer and then look at it, and at that point in time, we'll be more than happy to turn it over to the board to see what the results are. Like any good plan, you have to, after you've done it for a year, step back, evaluate, and make any changes or improvements. So this is the first summer of this, and the plan moving forward is to continually evaluate and make changes as necessary. But this will be the first year where we can comprehensively collect data that then we can report on.
I just want to say, as somebody who has taught summer school, who taught in a Title I school, I know the importance of those kids having summer school. And what we used to do before Summer Sizzlers, as teachers, we'd be asked, which students in your classroom need the most help? And we would get that. Once Summer Sizzlers was instituted, it was just whoever wanted to go. And we weren't targeting those kids that needed that help. So I want to thank you for targeting those kids who need the extra help, because the extra time, the extra attention, all of that is so important for them. So thank you for the collaboration, and I'm real happy that you worked in collaboration, and you're able to serve more of our kids and target those kids that need the help. So thank you so much. Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. So I do have a couple other questions. When you spoke to logistics and next steps, and you mentioned that the costs were shared by the district, our operating budget, Title I, 21st Century, and the Y. You didn't tell us how much, so I'm going to specifically ask you how much. And then my next question is going to be demand versus capacity. So right now you spoke, 2 teachers, 200, whatever, X number of kids in each of those schools. So that to me is capacity. So if you could talk about how much does it cost now to deliver the services to the population you've identified, and then I want you to step back and say, gee, if we had, and tell us how much you're spending. But if I had an extra X number of dollars, I can service X many more students. Because this kind of stuff, from what we've seen, the little we've seen, has huge leverage and a great impact on each of those kids' academic experience. So high value, especially in the younger grades, means less tutoring when they get older and everything else. So if you can address the money side of it, and then the demand versus capacity, and what could you do with X amount of dollars?
The last question is something that we may have to get back to you on, exactly the breakdown. I can share this. The total cost for the program came out to just shy of $320,000. It was $319 something. And again, so we looked at what's been spent in the past, where we've got existing staff in place from the Y and from 21st Century, and then what the Y could provide, what the Y's been spending on these kinds of programs. So that averages out to $888 per scholar. Now, if our demand is beyond 360, it comes back to it's more staff is the greatest expense. That per scholar amount will go down. So there's some economies of scale, not a lot, but there's some economies of scale as we add, because we don't necessarily have to add overhead. But it would be teachers. So if we're saying 360, if we end up with 400 that are the district believes it would benefit from the program, and we would need to see where we could come up with more money from the Y standpoint. So we've been able to fund this at this point. The Y is continuing to seek funding. So we've got the money that we were planning on spending for this summer, but we're going to continue to seek funding sources that would either help us if demand goes beyond 360, and if it doesn't go beyond 360, then that funding can help with the district and offset some of the operating funds. So, and we believe that after we get, so actually to your points earlier about the data, and we've got this national data, but what's our local data? We'll have local data about this program at the end of this summer that we can then go out and tell a really powerful story about the collaboration. I've been doing this for 20 years with the YMCA in various communities, and I can share with all of you the leadership of this district has been so wonderful to work with, and that's something I've worked with lots of school districts around New England in my career, and these folks have been so incredible to work with. We believe that story, that partnership, and hopefully the data that we're going to have locally, that we'll be able to go out and find more funding to possibly expand the program in future summers.
So maybe Mr. Donovan is the best person to ask. I know he has these numbers in his head. Dan, do you remember the contribution that we're making from the operating budget?
Of the 319 that Joe had mentioned, I believe the operating budget specifically is about 70,000. Then there's funds from special revenue, there's funds from Title I, there's funds from the Y. I can't give you a number right off the top of my head that's going to add up to that number, but Those are the funding resources. We're also looking at the ELL grant, the dropout prevention grant. But we've done some rough calculations, and we should be able to come up with the funds with what we have in the budget right now.
Understood. I was just curious what the investment was, and knowing Mr. Donovan, he's always looking in all those little pies to squeeze money out of something. So $70,000 in the operating budget is cheap money for me in terms of the investment that we're making and the results we're getting. So if we have a chance to throw more, at least I know now, have some idea. And maybe that helps you is, when you go out for your funding, hey, well, the school district previously supplemented money, whatever, and they now giving us more, so there's value, we want to do more. So thank you so much. I think you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, me.
Oh, okay, Mr. Mosier.
We talk about funds, and it's nice to hear everybody batting around, all of these thousands of dollars. But how much of this money is going to be continuous? How much of it is going to be able to be used over time to continue this program? Because if you have it for 1 year or 2 years, and then all of a sudden you find that you don't have any money because of the budget constrictions or the Y runs out of capital. Excuse me. Well, for some other reason that we're not able to continue this, what's going to happen then?
I'm not sure what to say.
The question is, what if we can't continue it? What happens then? We can always think about what if and something doesn't happen, but right now in the moment, it's happening. So we're looking forward to that, and we'll do knock on many doors, be as creative as we can to create some type of funding for these kids so that there's no regression over the summertime. And they also get some social emotional skills. I'd also like to add, Mr. Kaufman asked, what's the demand? I think it's a great question. And to be honest with you, my immediate response is $17 million. That's how much we need, shoot for the moon and then we'll work our way down. I don't know. But with that said, you talk about vision, you talk about expectation. Honestly, I'd love to run this in every single one of our elementary schools. We talk about our most needy kids, but there are kids who are doing really well, but yet they're going to experience some regression over the summertime. And what student, what kid, whether they are great swimmers or not, doesn't want to have fun and go swimming during the summertime? So, the reaction I have is I'd love to run it in every single one of our elementary schools, our middle schools, and keep our kids engaged, because we know if they're with us during the summertime, they're not out in the streets. So that's kind of where I'd like it to be. So I hear Mr. Mosier's question. If we don't have the money to run the program won't exist. But moving forward, we want to make sure that we're advocating for our program, exhausting. Hopefully we'll get our grant writer, and he or she will go after aggressively funds for our schools and for our kids.
That answer your question, Mr. Mosier? Sorry.
It tells me that they're going to be aggressive in trying to get funds, right. But I've got a budget myself that when I see that it starts to run low, and my bank account, so what do I do now? And same thing with the school district. I mean, when they start to run low on money, and budget time is always a crunch time for us. That's what I'm looking at, and saying that that's all nice, and we have a lot of pie in the sky, but we got to pay for it. It's not you want to do the right thing. We all want to do the right thing, but the right thing sometimes takes a lot of money.
I have to say, from what I've seen and what I've heard tonight, it looks like we have leveraged our money so that we're serving more kids better. So I think we've done real well with what we've done, and I compliment all of you. Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, just for the funding in this, we really haven't spent any more money than we spent last year. We're just spending it different, and in my opinion, and I think others, better. So we haven't, and the other benefit of the money, it's coming from multiple pots. So you might lose one of those pots, but you're not going to lose all of them in 1 year. That's just not going to happen. So that's the advantage of this.
Thank you. You have, and well, I just want to thank Mr. Manzoli, Ms. Casey, Laurie Rothaus, lots of people that had something to do with this, Mr. Donovan, Dr. McKinney, Ms. Fitzpatrick, Dr. Mosley. It was a work of a lot of people coming together to do what's best for our kids, and I appreciate that. And I think a lot of our kids are going to benefit from this program, and I think we're going to see a great deal of reward from what you're doing, working in a program like this, helping so many of our kids. So thank you so much. Great presentation. Is there anything that needs to be removed from the consent agenda? If not, do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Voice vote?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher, isn't he on the phone?
Yep.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
This is, okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. And the motion passes 5-0.
Okay.
But Ms. Timmons isn't here.
Ms. Timmons just stepped out for a minute.
Okay.
She'll be right back.
But it still
there'd be
passed.
4-0.
Was 5-0.
5-0, Mr. Mosher.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Is there any communication outside the consent agenda? Okay. We're at the public question comment period, which is on the agenda next, limited to hopefully 15 minutes. Is there anybody who signed up? No? Nobody? Okay. Okay. Superintendent comments.
Well, thank you. Just a couple.
Excuse me, as a point of order, can we continue without a quorum present?
No, this
I thought,
fine.
oh, I thought she walked in.
She's here.
We have well, no, we have
just-
to have somebody here.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
We have to have 5 in the room, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep, you're right.
thank you. Sorry, Dr. Mosley.
No, do you just, so I'm, actually a good point, Mr. Kaufman. Does that vote need to be taken again, or is that okay? The 5?
The communication outside of the
Oh, they-
consent agenda? We can. Why don't you take the vote again?
So it's covered.
Okay, this is a roll call for the, we're going to take this roll call again, vote for the, to accept the consent agenda. Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
And Mr. Guarino votes yes. So the motion carries 6-0.
Okay. Ms. Timmons, do you have any communication outside the consent agenda?
No, I don't.
Nobody else did, okay. Superintendent's
Okay, well, it's been busy. Part of what we've been working on over the last couple of weeks has been the summer school endeavor. And so it's been a series of meetings, refining the presentation, finding the right funding sources, and really having some productive and collaborative conversations. So I'm very, very pleased with the outcome of what we're going to be proposing for the summer. In fact, we wanted to present to this particular board at this time because we're going to be posting for positions to be filled, so everything is quite timely. There's something that's going on in the district that's been fun, and we were able to say, we, Donna, Garth, myself, central office, Mr. Marcoux, I'm trying to think, some of our administrators, it's Read Across America month for our little guys. And so Read Across America in the city of Nashua does not involve just one or two elementary schools. There's all of our elementary schools that we've gone out to and visited. And so it's been a nice endeavor in the sense that we were able to, knowing you never can go wrong with Dr. Seuss or my favorite, Orville Talkington, The Moose That Lost His Antlers. So I read that to my little son when he was a young man and a young little boy, and I read it to all of the kids in Dr. Christ and Fairground, so elementary school. So it was a really nice endeavor for myself. I know that Donna's been out to elementary schools, Garth has, and it's just been really fun. So thank you for everyone who participated in that. We'll get into this a little bit more. Part of what has been going on in the district, we're coming up on our NEASP visit at the South. Within all of the board members should have received some form of invitation. Everyone's welcome to come. I will just make a note that we probably just make note that if we just have to post a meeting just in case there's a quorum. But I encourage all board members and the community to come out on the 25th, Sunday the 25th at South to start our NEAS accreditation. This is nothing negative whatsoever. Every single high school in New England that looks to be accredited goes through this process. It's a great way for us to do some self-reflection. It's a great way for us as a district to improve and get better at what we do, but also highlight what we do well here in Nashua, in this case at the South High School. Next year, North will go through that process, and that will be something that we're looking forward to and excited to do so. I would be remiss if I didn't say that tomorrow is officially a snow day, and I was reluctant, and I hate to call snow days in the middle of March, but Mother Nature has led me with no choice. There's no snow. You guys can sleep in tomorrow. So now you can't leave early. You have no excuse. So you can stay long and have fun, and I expect you to be here after the non-public just to close out the meeting. So, no, I'm kidding. You can leave. But listen, I can't predict Mother Nature. This is an unusual situation. At best, from all reports, I say all reports, not just one or two, we're probably looking at 10 plus feet of snow. So with that said, 10 feet, yeah, 10 feet, 10 inches of snow, excuse me. Feels like feet out there, 10 feet of snow. Hannah, make sure you don't put that in there. All right, I said 10 inches off the record, now I'm back on, so make sure you get that correct. All right. So listen, there's nothing, if I can get the information as soon as possible for all of our parents, I'm very sensitive to parents' needs in terms of childcare, working arrangements. Many of our parents travel outside of the state of New Hampshire. Some of our parents are traveling throughout the state of New Hampshire. And so with that said, if I have some good, clear data that I'm pretty sure it's going to be a pretty bad snowstorm out there, making the call early allows all of us to prepare, and teachers as well, and administrators to prepare and be ready for the storm. So that's all I have to say right now. I'll probably talk a little bit more. Am I missing something? Thank you.
The ceremony in Concord today for the Scholar Athletes?
Yes, there was a ceremony today. If I can just pull this up real quick, Lisa. Okay, yep. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
There was a ceremony today in the New Hampshire Scholastic Athlete Ceremony today. This was a ceremony that recognized our student athletes. We had a number of our athletes recognized for their accomplishments for sportsmanship, their accomplishments in terms of off the field, in terms of sportsmanship as well. So I want to say congratulations to those students who participated in that. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations to our principal, Nate Burns, Keith Richard, athletic, our athletic coordinators, and it seems like it was a very nice event for all of our student athletes. So I just wanted to acknowledge those athletes, acknowledge our athletic programs. I appreciate the way that you represent our schools on and off the field. So thank you so much.
Board members' response to the superintendent's comment. Anybody over here? Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. Thank you. Two quick things. The next time you do one of those Read Across Americas or the opportunity to read, you're looking for volunteers, could you let us know? I don't recall an invitation, but might have been able to get there. But I know in the past, board members have enjoyed that quite a bit.
Sure, absolutely.
It usually comes from the schools.
Well, everything is going through Dr. Mosley now. The schools don't contact us directly, if you recall.
Okay.
So
they love to do that, absolutely.
thank you. And the last thing, second last thing, has to deal with the NEAS. Can you please tell me the time on the 25th you'd want us here? Or in South, rather?
I don't have the invitation with me, but I'm lucky. Mr. Richard?
No, I said the monthly invitation, 12:30, and we're going to have a panel presentation at 12:45. Following that presentation, the visiting team would like to meet before.
Okay.
Right, so
So-
my question,
I'm sorry, Mr. Kaufman, for the public and for everyone, not here at the South.
South.
Okay.
right. So could you please provide the board, or I'm interested, I think the board would benefit if you could give us a copy of the accreditation report, the previous accreditation report, so we can kind of have a feel for what's going to, so we'd be better prepared.
Absolutely. So what I would propose, Mr. Kaufman, if this is sufficient, to give you a copy of the previous NEAS report that was done about 10 years ago, and then the high school did a self-assessment or a self-study on itself too. So that will be two documents that I can share with you, along with other documents that were submitted to the NEAS. So I don't have them all in front of me, but you'll have a comprehensive overview of what's happened 10 years ago and what's happening right now, and what the NEAS representatives will have prior to their assessment of the South.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate the depth there, because it's helpful to know what they know when we're going in. So thank you very much.
Mr. Hansi, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Student members, Ms. Sweeney, do you have anything?
None at this time.
Okay. Mr. Gillis, all set? Okay. Moving right along. Committee on the Budget, Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. So on February 28th, we did meet here. That was the night the mayor was here. So we discussed that. Mr. Donovan also reviewed the budget tool, the spreadsheet. We subsequently got a link, and we've been able to use that if you upgrade your browser. That seems to be the key thing there. And then what was the third thing we did that night? Sorry. We had Mr. Dowd, Alderman Dowd, really, and I hadn't even spoken to him, and I didn't even know he wanted to speak, but he actually came prepared and gave us a great overview of our budget process. And the other thing we did was talk about substitute teachers. Don't want to forget that. We had to cancel, unfortunately, due to weather, our March 7th meeting this coming Wednesday here at 7 p.m. I'm expecting to be here for a budget meeting, which would be open to the public, for the public comment on the budget. You're looking at me, Dr. Mosley, you're going to have to let me know, but
I hope we're here too. I hope we're here as well.
Okay, I'm hopeful that the snow will be cleared up enough that we won't have a problem getting in. And like I said, it's just the public hearing. I want to invite the public. It'll begin at 7 p.m. in this room. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Committee on Finance and Operations, Mr. Greeno.
I don't have anything to report because since last time we met, we haven't met.
Okay. And you had a meeting scheduled tomorrow night, but it's
Yes,
canceled?
it's canceled.
Okay. Have you talked about a date to reschedule that? Tentative date?
Yeah, I believe next Tuesday is the plan.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, Committee on Policy. Gosh, Miss Raymond chaired that, and she's not here tonight. Do you want to talk to a little bit what was at policy? We have these recommendations.
Well, if you wish, the one thing I can say is the recommendations that were on the agenda were not the actual recommendations made by the committee. The committee did not include, we did move it forward to the board, but we did not have a recommendation, the recommendation did not include an effective date. So I can say that to be the case for those first two policies. If you want to talk about those policies, I think there's a lot to be discussed about them. There was an email today that we received, the board received from a former board member, Mr. Hollowell, who actually made an extensive comment on his suggestion of how some of this text could be improved. There's, I'll speak to this policy if you want to go through it, Mrs. Oden. I'm thinking there's a lot more work on this particular policy that could probably be done at the committee level for both of these two policies. So I'm not sure that's the highest and best use of the board's time at this point in time.
No.
As far as the other things that came out of policy, those were pretty straightforward, and I think the board could absolutely move forward with that information tonight.
Okay. Ms. Raymond wasn't here, but she had a statement that she wanted read. And Ms. Fitzpatrick, do you have anything?
Yeah, I was going to actually speak to BEA and BDE,
Okay.
the two policies that Mr. Kaufman's referring to.
Uh-huh.
At the policy committee, subcommittee meeting, we had a long conversation about the proposed language. And I just want to say that in terms of what I was hearing and what I hear frequently is that the board meetings run so long that it's, difficult for board members to stay engaged in a positive way because it gets late. And also that people at home and in the audience find it hard to maintain focus for that long in a meeting. And this language is actually developed to help the board move towards its ultimate goal, which is more efficient meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately, if the board with its new configuration was able to move towards more efficient meetings, this policy language wouldn't be necessary. But this is a tool that the board can use to help them move towards, help us, move towards the goal of more efficiently run meetings. So I think the spirit of this language is to support the board improving how they function as a board by making sure that people are focused on the agenda, focused on the important items, and making sure that we don't go too far afield off topic of things that sometimes come into the meetings.
Okay. Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. Ms. Raymond did leave she left some written, something written that she wanted us to read into the record regarding policies BDA and BDE regarding time limits for the meetings. So I'd like to read those for us. I think that as a board, we have gotten into the habit of following Robert's rules loosely, if at all, regarding member comments. While this is not necessarily a bad thing at smaller committee meetings, as it allows for more discussion at the regular BOE meetings, it has become a distraction and is significantly negatively impacting our ability to work efficiently and effectively. At the last regular meeting, some BOE members spoke 4 or more times on the same topic, and went on at length during their speaking times. It has also become a habit for many members, myself included, to speak so long that we are repeating our points. My hope regarding this policy was that it would cause members to take a moment to gather their thoughts before speaking and to be cognizant of the time they are personally taking up in meetings. While our meetings are open to the public, they are not for the public. Thus, commentary by members should not include statements or speeches to the public. We also should refrain from repeating ourselves. If we all listen respectfully to each other, it is not necessary to speak again to make the same point. I think that if we limit ourselves to Robert's Rules guidelines of speaking once toward the matter at hand and then one response if needed, we can cut our meeting time down to a manageable level. We have a duty to serve the citizens and not waste each other's time on private agendas. Thank you.
Ms. Timmons?
I agree with Ms. Fitzpatrick. The BDE should be voted on tonight, and let's get it over with. I don't see where this needs to go back to the table or anything like that. Our meetings are too long. I think the language is great in this particular policy.
Ms. Hoansey?
Thank you. Tonight's meeting, we had a presentation that took an hour. It was a great presentation, but that would have been half of our meeting. I think some more thought ought to be given to this policy. You've got roll calls because we have Mr. Mosier on the phone. That adds 20 to 30 minutes a meeting. I mean, if there's a lot of votes, that it's a lot slower to do a roll call than it is for a voice vote. You've got truncated business at the end that there should be something in the policy to say that it either goes to the front of the next meeting or that will be included. That's not delineated. We can have presentations public comment that could go on over 15 minutes. That would take away from our meeting. You haven't included non-public or non-meetings in here. If we have interviews, if we have a principal coming, we have a couple being interviewed, they will come and they will take off a good amount of time, in addition to the regular business of a full board meeting. Also, the New Hampshire School Boards Association, that many on this board want to become members of it, when he was sat here and he answered the question, he didn't recommend this type of policy for our board. You can check in the minutes. But the biggest reason for why we shouldn't straitjacket ourselves is because this will, when you get to the end of the meeting and the time is up, the majority can push out the minority, and there can be favored board members and exclusionary votes so that certain things don't get the light of day. I just don't want it to come to that. I think we're reasonable. Without this policy, there have been many times in the past 2 years that I've been on the board that we've adjourned. We said, it's late, we're not functioning well, and we've adjourned. We've agreed to that without a policy hanging over our head. I think we're a reasonable body. This worries me. It's not well thought out, and I can't support it.
Mr. Kaufman.
Thank you. To the issues that Mrs. Hohensee raised, I would also make a suggestion that some kind of a trial period be put into this policy. I tried it at a budget committee meeting, and it really messed up the flow of the presentations, the discussions, and the interruptions. The other thing, if I may, I'd like to read what Mr. Christina said to this particular board just 2 weeks ago when I asked him about his comments relative to BOE meetings and also committee meetings. This is what he said. Sure, I think my response would be the same, Mr. Kaufman. When a committee or the board sets an agenda, presumably that's around the work that you think you can get through in a, quote, typical meeting, and you do your best to try and get through that. As I said, if you get to a point where you have not completed the work listed on the agenda, but the meeting is getting unproductive for whatever reason, perhaps you close the meeting at that time, but setting a specific time, but setting a specific amount of time on a committee or board meeting, I suppose it may be more common at a committee meeting. No, I don't think I'd put a specific time limit on a committee meeting. So the question had to deal with both board and committee meetings. Mr. Christina, who represented the School Board Association here just 2 weeks ago, recommended that we not do something like that. So if we're really interested in listening to the advice of the School Board Association, here we had somebody before us relating to us specifically on this matter and recommended that we not do it. For that and other reasons, I will not support this.
Mr. Mosier?
Thank you. I will support this because we have, crossed over the line many times with, people who have, I'm looking for a way to express this so that it would come out reasonably well. And that is that we do have some people that make a presentation, which they come off very well, but because they, some of them appear to have been vaccinated with a phonograph needle. And I don't think that we need that. I think we need to be mindful of the time that we spend in the committee or on a particular subject, or the length of time that a particular person has to express himself. And if you are not able to express yourself, you should be able to realize that there is a time to cut things off and move on, because we do have people who have to travel. They have to get up in the morning. They have other responsibilities to fulfill, even as I do over here, confined to the premises as I am. And we have to be mindful of what the responsibilities are and the people that we represent. And, like you said, people that, over a period of time, they lose interest in it. They say, oh, geez, he's at it again. Or I can't sit up and listen to all of this. So I mean, we have to be mindful of what we're doing and how we do it and how we express ourselves, to be short.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Timmons?
Yes, Madam President. We have a 2-hour time frame that we do our meetings, and if we can't say what we need to say in the 2 hours, then we should have an open no time. We have a time, and that's 2 hours. We should remain in those 2 hours. I think our meetings are way too long, and we need to get on with the business. People repeat things like Heather said over and over again. You just stick to the subject, say what you want to say, and that's it. 3 or 4 follow-up questions is sometimes unnecessary, and that's what we get all the time. If we stick to the agenda and stick to the time, we can get through the agenda in the 2-hour time frame.
Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion to accept policy BEA and BDE.
Second it.
To be effective March 2018.
Second.
Okay, second.
Division.
Second.
Separate the two motion, the motion into two.
Wait once.
No,
yeah, but-
excuse me, I think what he's doing two policies in one motion. That's what we're asking if we can divide the motion so we could talk to the second policy before we vote on it. We've talked to BEA, we haven't talked to BDE.
We're speaking to BDE right now. That's what we're doing.
He said both.
You said both. Okay. Can you repeat that, please?
I mean, a motion
to accept these two. Okay, we'll just do one.
Do one, then you do the other.
Okay, I'll withdraw the motion, and instead I'll make a motion to accept policy BEA. I'm sorry.
Do you
I also
withdraw your second?
withdraw my
Okay.
second.
Recommend motion to accept policy BEA, regular board meetings to be effective 2018.
I second that.
Do you want to speak to your motion? I know we've had discussion, we've heard everybody's, but would you like to?
I think we have an obligation to be prepared, to be succinct, to speak, and not spend a lot of time on things that we have to be prepared and be succinct. And I think this is a good motion. I don't want to repeat what other people have already said. So.
Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. I'd like some clarification on this one sentence. I think perhaps it could go. It says, board members may make determinations to lengthen the meeting time by 30-minute increments with a majority vote to conclude a specific topic being discussed. So if you're in the middle of a topic, you take a majority vote to finish the topic. And then it says, the additional 30-minute extension, does that mean the one we just did, shall require a 2/3 vote to continue the meeting. So this is not as clear as it could be. This is why Mr. Hollowell was confused when he spoke to us 2 weeks ago. It's very confusing to have a self-contradictory policy.
Ms. Fitzpatrick, do you want
Yes,
to
we
speak to
discussed
that?
this at this policy subcommittee meeting. The first 30 minutes and the way it is written is specifically about a topic that hasn't been completed. The other 30 minutes would be if you're in between items on the agenda, but people feel that there's more information that needs to be brought forward on the agenda. So let's say, for example's sake, we are finishing the policy part and it's 9 o'clock, but everybody knows it's important that we go on to the Committee on Human Resources. That's when the second vote would take place because we're in between topics on the agenda. So the first paragraph is about when we're in the middle of a topic. The second paragraph relates specifically to when you're in between items on the agenda.
So for clarification, are you saying when you go to take up another item on the agenda?
Yes.
That's when, okay.
Yes.
Dr. Mosley?
I think that was clear enough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, to the motion itself, I think it's ill-advised. I think it's self-destructive on the part of the board. I do not believe it serves the public interest, and I will vote no.
Okay. Can I just speak? I will support the motion. I think the extra time allows us to continue a meeting if necessary. I understand if you have a presentation, it takes up time, and I think we can allow for that by voting for extra time. But I think we do need to conduct our business more efficiently, and I think this could be a way to improve. I know our students would like to see shorter meetings. So, Ms. Hohensee.
Thank you. I move that we amend this with just two slight changes to make it clearer.
Okay.
If the second sentence said, any additional 30-minute extension shall require 2/3, then you know that you have the first 30 minutes with the majority, and just change the word "the" to any. Any additional 30-minute extension shall require the 2/3 vote. It might make it a little clearer.
Second.
No.
Maybe what we should do is send this back to committee. Making changes at the board, it just takes our meetings too long. I would say, why don't we send this back to committee and make the changes at committee?
The motion is on the floor.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
There was a
Okay.
motion to amend, which I seconded, which was Ms. Hohensee's change to the word "any."
Okay.
Oh.
Where is the change?
I think it's in the second paragraph, yes.
First word?
Yeah, any additional.
Any additional, okay. Okay, so the second paragraph would read, any additional 30-minute extension shall require a 2/3 vote to continue the meeting. Is that correct, Ms. Hohensee? Is that what you?
Yes.
Okay. So let's take a vote on the amendment.
Okay. On the amendment, to change the first word to any, Mr. Mosher?
No.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
No.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. So the motion to amend it passes. So the second paragraph would read any additional 30-minute extension.
Okay, what was the vote on that?
Sorry, the vote was 4 yeses and 2 noes.
Okay. Okay, so now the vote on the main motion.
The vote on the main motion to accept policy BEA. Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. So we have 4 yeses and 2 noes. The motion carries
Okay.
as amended.
Now, do you want to do the second policy that you were, they asked for division?
Yep.
He withdrew it, point of order. He withdrew it and then redid it, so there's no division necessary. Now would be time for a new motion.
That's what I'm
Okay.
saying.
Ready
Yeah.
to do.
Mhm.
Right, not a division, a new one.
No, that's why I said you asked for division, so he has to do the second one. He had put them together.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make a motion for the board to accept policy BDE to be effective March 2018.
Second that.
You want to speak to your motion, Mr. Guarino?
Again, this has to do with being brief, being prepared, and limiting our meetings so that we don't go on all night long. I think, we have an obligation to the public, we have an obligation to ourselves to come here to be prepared, and also to speak briefly, and not to get off on tangents.
Ms. Hohensie?
Thank you. As to my question before the point of order, if the two policies were in there and I asked for a division of the motion, we would have voted on it, separated, and we would have 2 in a row. But as we withdrew them, there was no division any longer. It was just a whole new motion. But I would like to amend this policy with the same word, any. For clarity, I would also like to exempt the Budget Committee and exempt interviews, non-public and non-meetings that occur within committees. If I can get a second, I'd like to speak to it.
Second.
Okay, you may speak to your motion.
In HR in particular, you go into non-public for interviews, or you do some of them in public. Sometimes they take a long time, especially if you have more than one candidate. I just don't, I don't want to hamper the committee action to have to take a vote or a second vote or keep track of the time when we're just doing normal business. When we tried it at the Budget Committee, we went an hour over the allotted 90 minutes. We went for 2.5 hours. Just a half hour over the normal 2 hours, but it was necessary. If we spread out our budget meetings, we won't get done till June if we started from the beginning. Thankfully, we've got a few of them under our belt and we're way ahead of the game, but I'm just concerned that the Budget Committee particularly, that's business that the board as a whole needs to deal with in a timely manner. So I'd just like to exempt Budget Committee, interviews, non-public sessions, and non-meetings.
I would agree with this, as it says standing committees. The Budget Committee isn't considered a standing committee of the board.
It's listed there, Mrs. Oden.
I know it's listed there, but it shouldn't be. It's not a standing committee of the board.
Right.
So I think maybe this needs to go back to policy to take the budget committee out of there.
I think you're absolutely correct. Send it back to the committee and rewrite it so that the budget committee is a committee of the whole and not a standing committee. That should be ratified in the policy.
Ms. Fitzpatrick?
I just want to point out that the policy, as it was previously written, does have the Budget Committee as a standing committee, so it's not a change that was made. It was actually in the policy before. Number 4, under standing committees. So this was not a change that was put in, and I'm very happy to work with policy to revise this, but I want to point out that that was not a change that was recommended. It was already in the policy.
And I could see where there would be some confusion because at one time, I don't know if it was a standing committee, but it was only, I think it had 5 members. Am I right, Mr. Bolton?
I believe that's correct.
And then it went to a committee of the whole. So maybe that's where some of the problem is, but it's not considered at this point a standing committee. Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I have no objection to seeing this go back to policy, but I would probably go to that meeting, but the Budget Committee needs to be identified as a committee of the whole in this policy. It would just be moved out of this section if that's what the discussion is.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Do we need a motion to send that back to committee? Mr. Guarino?
I would like to withdraw my motion to accept this, this policy.
And I second, I withdraw mine.
Point of order. I believe the motion on the, I'm sorry. I believe the motion on the floor was to the amendment, not to.
Well, I also have a motion on the floor. That's to amend my motion, so I can
Mrs.
withdraw
Hohensee
it.
has not withdrawn, or we haven't taken a vote. So what I'm saying is I don't believe your motion is the current motion. That's all I'm trying to say. So we have to unfold
Hers
the onion.
an amendment, mine was a motion.
Right.
So hers
was
an
seconded.
amendment. Hers was an amendment to my motion. So my motion was on the floor.
Actually, the amendment is on the floor because it was seconded. And then we have to deal with that, and then we have to deal with the motion once we've dealt with the amendment. Mr. Bolton, do you want to play parliamentarian? Please.
The proper procedure, I believe, would be, if it's the desire of the board, for someone to make a motion to refer the matter with the pending motion to amend and the pending motion to adopt, adhering back to committee. But in point of fact, the present posture is that the motion to amend is what is pending. But none of that has to be withdrawn, and you don't have to unravel it all to send it back to committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good night for you to be here. So we will be sending policy BDE back to committee, back to the policy committee. Now we have a recommendation. Policy. Mr. Kaufman?
Do you want me to continue with this? So the next policy recommendation by the policy committee was to adopt, recommendation to adopt JLCJ, concussion and head injuries for student athletes as amended. And I'll speak to what the change was. If you go to the second page, the last full paragraph, the text to that end, a return to learn protocol has been developed for all students in the district when diagnosed with a concussion. And I guess, Ms. Fitzpatrick, is that URL been made available?
It is, but we're also going to include it in the policy.
No, so that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
So it says where to add the URL, so I'm asking if you know what it is.
No, I don't, but we have a link on the website already, and so when Tara does the final, the actual link will be included in the policy. So that if the parent's looking it up online, they can click on the link and open to it.
The additional change made on this policy was also under additional resources. And it specifies a specific document and a related, or two related organizations, rather, about concussions. So, I mean, you'd like to see things in their final form when they come to the board for approval. So I actually, what I thought was going to happen.
Excuse me, can you get a second before you go
I'm
into
sorry.
discussion? Thank you. Motion.
I know, I think I just started talking. So I'll move to accept, move to accept, yeah, I did. I said I made a recommendation to accept JLCJ.
Second.
So now you can continue discussion.
Thank you. So, I mean, this came before the board 2 weeks ago. It was delayed and came again. I would have thought that the URL would have been made available and this document could have been updated. So, I mean, if you want to accept it, it's somewhat incomplete, but the intention is clear.
Ms. Sohansy?
Thank you. I think he's right that the URL should have been in there, but it's under additional resources. So there was supposed to be a URL to write return to learn protocol, and then a URL to return to play protocol. Additionally, at the bottom, that's what I had written down when I was in committee.
Ms. Fitzpatrick?
I don't understand why we'd have a link to return to play policy when the policy is in front of the person that would be clicking on the link. I'm confused by that.
It was the protocol, not the policy.
Right.
We had a link to return to learn protocol and a return to play protocol. There was some protocol on the web that they could read. We didn't want to duplicate it in the policy.
Right.
So I believe there was supposed to be a link for additional resources to those two protocols included in the policy so they'd know where to turn.
Okay.
That was my understanding.
All right.
And I'm happy to pass this as is. I just want that to help the public.
Okay. I understand now.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I believe that is correct. As long as you have it noted in the policy that as additional resources, you don't need a URL.
Mr. Kaufman, do you have something?
Yes,
quick?
thank you. I mean, it's a minor change. I know this was the one we wanted to accelerate, if I remember. We wanted this one to move through quickly. But I do, to kind of channel Ms. Van Twyver, it's always good to present a final document for the board to review, not one that we're talking about corrections on. So I'll leave it to the chair, if Mrs. Oden, if you would want to move this forward or send it to committee for its fine-tuning, as it were.
I have confidence that administration will handle this. Thank you. Looking for a vote. You want to reread the motion? I'll reread it, that's okay. Recommendation to accept policy JLCJ, concussion and head injuries for student athletes as amended, and add the area in red along with the URLS to protocol.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. The motion carries 6-0.
Next one.
Move to, sorry. Move to recommend the acceptance of policy JLCK,
Second.
renamed Special Physical Health Needs of Students.
Seconded by Mrs. Hohensee. Do you want to speak to that, Mr. Kaufman?
I think perhaps Ms. Fitzpatrick could speak to it. I think this was something that was required by law, if I recall.
And JLCK was actually proposed, and I don't know why, but it wasn't voted on last year. But this policy covers the health needs of students, and it's directly associated with the next policy that we're looking to rescind, which is no longer appropriate. So JLCK was proposed last year, but it didn't get voted on. I don't know why. And it covers the needs of what may have previously been in policy 4234 that we are next going to ask to rescind.
Okay. Anybody else? We could take a vote.
On the motion, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, and the motion carries 6-0.
Motion to rescind policy 4234, Down syndrome students.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Vote.
On the motion to rescind policy 4234, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, and the motion carries 6-0.
Motion to accept policy JLCC, communicable diseases. If I recall correctly, this is really a renaming of the policy mnemonic from the numeric to the JLCC. The content is identical to previously an existing 4230. We're just really renaming the four-letter characters is what this is about.
Yes, and the only thing I wanted to add was I sent it out to the head nurse, and all the nurses in the district reviewed to make sure there weren't any relevant changes, and there weren't. So it's going to be current along with the change in how it's identified.
Thank you.
Mrs. O, the only thing I might just point out is when Tara updates this, she should update that date at the bottom of the page as a revision date, so it doesn't slide away.
Okay, on the vote, on the motion to accept policy JLCC, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, the motion carries 6-0.
Motion to rescind policy 3221 entitled cancellation or alteration
Excuse me.
of, I'm sorry.
4230, I think.
Yeah, you need to rescind for the communicable diseases.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't rescind. I'm sorry, got out of order here, folks. Motion to rescind policy, excuse me, 4230, communicable diseases, as we've just updated it, renamed it prior to this.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher.
Seconded by Mr. Mosher.
Any comments, discussion? Okay, vote.
On the motion to rescind policy 4230, Mr. Mosher,
Yes.
Mrs. Oden,
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman,
Yes.
Ms. Timmons,
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie,
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, the motion carries 6-0.
The committee motion to recommend to rescind policy 3221, cancellation or alteration of the length of the school day.
Second.
And I'd like to speak to the motion. I actually disagree with the rescinding of this policy. I think it's actually quite relevant. I recall in committee, a proposal that I made was to just keep the first paragraph and delete the second paragraph because of some of the information that Dr. Mosley shared with us. But I think it's absolutely important, very clear to the board, to the public, to our staff, that the board is authorizing, the first paragraph reads, the superintendent of schools is authorized to cancel school or alter the length of a school day in instances of inclement weather or emergencies. That's exactly what Dr. Mosley did this afternoon, and I think there should be a clear policy enabling that authority. So I'm actually against the motion to rescind. And I guess what I would do is, we did the second, I would move to amend 3221 to delete the second paragraph in its entirety.
Second.
Okay. Do you want to speak to your motion?
Thanks. Well, the need to eliminate the second paragraph, if I recall Dr. Mosley's conversation, is you really don't want to involve the board president in the ongoing saga of deciding what the weather forecast is going to be and should be cancel or delay or whatever. And I think he was doing that out of kindness to whomever the board chair might be. But I do think it's important that we keep this policy intact.
Ms. Fitzpatrick?
I believe part of the reason that this policy was presented to the policy subcommittee is because part of a superintendent's job description includes determining whether or not there are emergencies that are causing cancellation of school. And frankly, as I'm going through the policy manual, I'm trying really hard to make sure that we're focusing on policies that need to be in the policy manual so that we don't have more than we need. This is one of those situations where less is more. It's part of the superintendent's job description that he or she makes these determinations. So the subcommittee felt there really wasn't a need for the policy.
Dr. Mosley?
I ask that the committee certainly rescind this policy, because by default, by keeping the policy, and then that means if I don't contact the chair, then I'm breaking the policy. And so that whoever the chair is going to be getting numerous phone calls from me at all hours of the night, and that's not appropriate, And I think that it ties my hands, it ties the chair's hands. How many times do I keep contacting or attempting to contact the chair before a decision is made? So it not just for myself, but 20 years down the road, the superintendent should have the authority and the autonomy to make that decision for the district. I think that's part of his or her responsibility.
Amen.
Ms. Hohensee?
Thank you. Just as a clarification, the amendment was to eliminate that problem, that second paragraph, and only keep the one-sentence policy just as a reiteration of what is in the job description for the point of view of the public, who doesn't usually go through job descriptions, they go through policies. It's just a little, one sentence for clarity. I don't see the harm in it, and to me, I would like to keep it.
Mr. Guarino?
From what I hear from Ms. Fitzpatrick is that this is redundant, that the superintendent of schools, as part of his job description, he is authorized to cancel school. That's the first sentence. So it's really not necessary to have it at all.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
So you want me to take a vote on the amendment to eliminate the second paragraph? Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes, so the yes has it, yeses have it, and the second paragraph is eliminated. On the motion to rescind policy 3221, cancellation or alteration of length of school day.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensee?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. So the The motion carries. This is rescinded. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-2.
That finishes policy and committee. Committee on Curriculum Evaluation. I know Ms. Van Twyver isn't here, but I don't believe we have a meeting. No, okay. Committee on Human Resources, Ms. Timmons?
Excuse me, point of order. Ms. Zoden, how do we implement the new policy? Am I to make a motion to adjourn or extend the meeting, or how is that supposed to work? It's now 9 o'clock. We've reached our 2-hour time limit.
I don't think it's effective until March 20th.
There was no date.
It was March 28th, I believe.
There was no
March
date.
28th?
Yes, and you have
No,
a date on that.
There
was no
I
date.
believe there was a date to it.
March 28th.
There was no date as part of the motion,
It was 2018.
is what he said. He
28.
didn't include a month or a day.
2018.
It's what he said was 2018.
Can you say March 28th?
The motion's, I believe the motion just said to begin March 2018. It didn't really have an exact date.
Okay.
Oh, 2018.
2018, not 28.
Okay.
There was no restriction that it didn't
Okay.
didn't take effect tonight. So I'm just making the point. What do you
Okay,
want to do?
Okay,
So-
we'll just continue and we'll have it.
We need a vote for the
effective
next
at
30
At the
minutes?
next, no, we can have it be effective at the next meeting.
Is that for the next board meeting or for the next committee meeting?
I
Or
would,
both?
I would say we could do it at, if it's going to be March 20th, we could do it at the next board meeting, which is what? 2 weeks from tonight, 14 and 12, 20, 26th?
Yep.
Okay. And we could have it start at committee meetings if the chair of that committee would like it to start then, I guess.
Point of order, that went back to committee. That one didn't pass. That one was referred back to committee.
Oh, okay. So we don't have an issue with that. Okay. So I guess when it goes back to committee, if you make sure you put a date on it, that would be helpful.
We'll make
Thank
sure
you.
that happens.
Thanks. Okay. Committee on Human Resources.
Madam President, I was not here that day. I had to leave for emergency, but we do have another meeting scheduled for the 26th of March.
Okay. Liaison reports. Anybody? I will say I had the opportunity to attend the art show at Nashua High South, and I think we probably had the biggest crowd I've ever seen. I got there, it was 6 to 8. I got there about 6:30, and I had to drive around the parking lot looking for a space. I had to wait for somebody to leave, so it was a huge success. And how fortunate I think our children are to have such a wonderful art program, devoted art teachers. It was just an absolutely stunning exhibit. It was just wonderful. All the way from kindergarten right up through the high school kids. There were several things I could have chosen to hang in any one of my rooms. So congratulations to all the students. Even if their work wasn't up there, they could only have so many wonderful pieces of artwork and great work by our art teachers. Okay. Unfinished business. Board request log. Update and prioritization. Okay.
I can
How
speak
we-
to it. I mean,
Okay.
we're just, certainly as the requests start to come in, we try to work on them the best we can in a timely manner. Sometimes they come in one at a time, and sometimes they come in at 5 at a time at a day. So, certainly it's been busy with the budget and the everyday running of the district. So, we're certainly, doing our best to do it. I think it might be helpful at some point, given the timing of the meeting and stuff, that there might be an opportunity for the board to give the administration some direction on terms of prioritizing which priority they want us to work on first, and then what we can do in turn is give you a time frame in terms of how long that's going to be. I think some of them are fairly quick and some of them are extensive. And so I don't want to disappoint anyone or any requests because they didn't get all the information, because it does take some time to do the research, the manpower, and to pull other people away from their everyday jobs to meet some of these requests.
It's obvious that some would take a substantial amount of time, and I know this is budget season. Obviously, you've been working on summer school. I look at the one, results of 4 Common Core state standards competency assessments currently used for grades 1 through 8, report card grades given to students for those same competencies. I would think something like that would be extremely time-consuming, so I can understand your concern about all of these. And as I said, with budget, I think that has to be your top priority, so appreciate that. Strategic planning?
Excuse me, Mrs. Oden.
Yes?
May I comment? So there's one on here that I submitted to the back of the second page, 1821. Has to deal with several budget questions.
Okay.
So I did ask Mr. Donovan, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Donovan, but I think your intent was to provide that on Wednesday?
Yes.
Thank you. So that is something we can kind of know that it's been addressed.
Okay. Turning to the second page, and I did notice you have several requests, and it's put online. You want things put online. And I think something like that, maybe everybody agrees it should be online, but I don't think that is something that one member of the board can ask for. I think that has to be voted by the entire board, Mr. Kaufman.
Fine, whatever you want to do. It's a best practice to have our procedures available for staff. And it's common practice anywhere and everywhere that they be online. But the fact is, Mrs. Oden, you cannot even get a hard copy of them at this point in time, let alone online.
Okay. But
So
what I
the
said...
point is, getting them updated is critical, but the extra work at the same time is negligible.
But the point was, one member cannot ask for something to be placed online. That should be a board decision. I think it's probably a good decision. Probably everybody would agree with it, but it's not anything that one board member can ask that something be put online. Thank you. Mr. Guarino.
Yeah, I have some comments from Ms. Raymond that she gave me regarding this subject, and she had a couple of things to say. She said, I suggest that we schedule time to review the entire request log to see if all of the items are still relevant or needed. Many may no longer be needed. Some, like the request to have all policies uploaded to the website, may already be on an action plan by staff. It is important that we don't interfere with the running of the district or seek to tell the superintendent how to manage his staff. I also suggest that requests to admin be only to assist board members in their decision-making process and to prepare appropriate agendas. Requests for personal board members' convenience should be of the lowest priority, if they are even appropriate to be made. Thank you.
The next thing, I believe, is strategic plan.
So I'll just speak briefly to that. Basically, we're ready to go. What I'm seeking from the board is just the authorization to move forward, to start to get the teachers together, to work with community members, to move forward with the strategic plan. There is a timeline, a proposed timeline in the back that the board has had an opportunity to review over the last 2 weeks. And we're excited, teachers are excited, administration excited, I'm excited, and we're looking just for a vote to move forward. My goal is to start assembling the team as soon as possible and to start to gather working the steering committee, some subgroups, and to really get this work going that is long overdue.
Mrs. Oden?
Mr. Kaufman?
Thank you. I have a statement that I've prepared to read about the strategic plan. Before I start, I want to point out that I was the one who put this on the agenda several weeks ago. I had a proposal. I noticed that we're not discussing that. We've jumped right to the administration's proposal. Therefore, I'm compelled to tell you what I have to tell you. The strategic planning is a process. It's not a decree. You cannot legitimately start a planning process without any predetermined income. Sadly, that is where we are today with the administration's proposal. For those of you who may not know my background, I have earned an internationally recognized certificate as a project management professional. PMPs know and understand process very well and routinely perform the tasks commonly associated with strategic planning. I am sure board members will remember Mr. Guarino's email where he asserted that I should be excluded from the strategic planning process. At this point, when this occurred, I knew immediately that this critical activity, namely the development and implementation of the district's strategic plan, would be in trouble and that we would need the resources of an outside consultant to perform this activity in an independent, unbiased, and disciplined manner. Dr. Mosley has already declared that we only need 5 goals. If so, we cannot enter a planning process with 2 of the 5 or 40% of the goals already determined. That simply makes no sense and limits the voice of all stakeholders. Goals for a district our size with 2,000 staff and 11,000 plus students need to reflect the entire school and extended community. For any planning process to work, it must be from the ground up. The people who live with the outcome of the planning process need to contribute and feel ownership of the process, but also its implementation. Goals should be structured as follows. Some of our teachers, staff, and administrators will recognize this format. I recall Mrs. Susing using it in a presentation. It's also something I used when I taught at the Lakes Region Community College. Goals should be SMART, S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-sensitive. Decisions of the strategic planning process must be informed by data. And believe me, there's a lot of data to be acquired and analyzed. Lastly, this process should be led by and driven by the board with the help of an outside consultant and not the administration. This is one of those instances where the administration is a resource to the committee and not a decision maker. It's similar to the way that the 3 different superintendents have participated in the last 2 teachers' union negotiations. I know because I was on those negotiation teams with Mr. Conrad, Dr. Brown, and Dr. Mosley. For the strategic planning process to be effective, it must be consistent and fair and must be bottom up. This ensures all voices in the community are heard, especially the children. If we are really smart about this, we would create a process that reached into every classroom and ensured that every student, teacher, and parent had a voice. If we were to develop a strategic plan that our students accepted as their own, the results would be incredible. If we don't get student, teacher, and parent buy-in and build consensus from the bottom up, I can just about guarantee that the entire effort will fail and be ignored and forgotten. Any board decision on a strategic plan is premature. The board simply does not have enough information to make an informed decision. There is no urgency to cause an immediate decision by the board. My recommendation is that we form a special committee of the whole and seek the advice of professionals who consult in this area. After we meet with several consultants, the board can then decide what action it deems best for the district. Therefore, I move that the board create an ad hoc committee of the whole to investigate the strategic planning needs of the district and produce a recommended action plan for consideration by the board. Thank you.
Second.
Do you want to speak to your motion, or do you
No,
want your statement?
my statement stands
Okay.
without, I don't need to add anything.
Anybody else want to?
Yeah, I would be against what Mr. Kaufman wants to do as a committee of the whole. We see what the committee of the whole in the budget does. Okay, we go on and on and on and on. I would also be against his idea to bring in outside consultants. They cost a lot of money. To do a strategic plan would be, you're talking thousands and thousands of dollars with an outside consultant. So we can do this in-house. We don't have to spend that money with the people that we have already. So I think that would be a mistake. And we shouldn't, as far as stakeholders go and stakeholder meetings, you know, having focus groups and having limited, not limited, but you have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you have to look at your focus groups and not have them go on forever and ever. We have to have this process. We have a schedule, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I think that I would be against what Mr. Kaufman is proposing.
Ms. O'Hensi?
Thank you. With a committee of the whole does not have to attend every meeting. We just need a quorum. We can set a lower number for a quorum. I don't know, I don't think we can do that, but we could, at least it's the ground up from the board, what we want to do. Those focus groups can come and present to the board. It doesn't have to be costly, doesn't have to have an outside consultant do that. That the committee of the whole could decide. I would support it because I think it would help the board become more informed, more fully informed before they take a vote on which direction we're going with our strategic goals. If we just want to delegate it away, this is the way to do it. Hand it over to the administration. If we want to do it as a board, I think we need the ad hoc committee. I think we can work with the administration, but I think we'd be stronger participants in the outcome, and I think the board would have more of a buy-in. And hopefully we can include the grassroots, all the different stakeholders, so that they feel as included as we will at the end of the process.
Mr. Mosier, do you have a comment?
Well, I'm thinking about it, and from what I hear, I don't support it.
Okay.
But I agree that we could bring in stakeholders, from the public, from the teachers, and everything, so that we keep the costs down, and we get ideas and information, and set some goals and objectives. I think that's the thing we want to do most of all, is have the goals and objectives and see the way that we can accomplish that.
Okay.
So, Mr. Kaufman, I appreciate the hard work that he's put into his statement, but I don't agree with it.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say, we hired a superintendent that has a PhD in education who has done a strategic plan. When I look at his job description, number 6, coordinates and assumes primary responsibility for short and long-range planning. I think that covers the strategic plan. When I look at Ed 303.01, I see in consultation with the superintendent and in accordance with statutes and rules of the State Board of Education, determine the educational goals of the district, develop long-range plans, and identify measurable and attainable short-term goals. When I look at the paper that Dr. Mosley gave us as to how he would develop his strategic planning steering committee, I see a business representative, a college representative, a community representative, the mayor, somebody from the Board of Aldermen, parents, elementary principals, secondary principals, students, teachers. I just think if you make it too big, it doesn't work. And I think the person that should be leading this is Dr. Mosley. I think that's where his education is. I think that's what he has trained to do. And I have every confidence that he will do it. So I can't support this. I will support Dr. Mosley moving forward, leading the Strategic Planning Steering Committee.
Mrs. Oden, could we have a vote? Can call the question,
He's going
please?
to call the question.
On On the motion, on Mr. Kaufman's motion to create a committee of the whole, Mr. Mosher?
No.
Mrs. Oden?
No.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
No.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes no. The motion fails. 4-2.
Mr. Guarino?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to accept Dr. Mosley's approach to the strategic plan, his approach to the Strategic Planning Ad Hoc Committee, his strategic planning process, and his strategic planning timeline.
I second that.
Do you want to speak to your motion?
I think you've already
Okay.
made a good point of it. So,
Mrs. Oden, question? Who would be the board member on that committee? Would that be you?
Not necessarily. As I said, when I was elected, I'm one vote, and it could be somebody else.
Oh, I nominate you for that position.
I don't think that's appropriate. I think Dr. Mosley might want to choose his own committee.
Okay, thank you.
okay, on the motion, Mr. Mosher?
The motion again.
To accept Dr. Mosley's approach to the strategic plan, to the strategic planning ad hoc committee, to his planning process and his planning timeline.
I have great respect for his training and for his thoughts, and I say yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
No.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
No.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. The motion carries 4-2.
Okay. 2018 committee list from 226 agenda. Is that the committee on?
Yes, this was just, part of what I wanted to do for the board is just to let the board know that since the contract's been settled, that there's a technology committee that's up and running and getting going as well. And so as these committees start to come, what I say, the word I'm going to use is come online, I just wanted to give the board an opportunity to just kind of let them know that these committees are coming into action, so to speak. And so the technology committee did have board participation. It wasn't led by the board. And certainly if their meetings are typically during the days, pretty much afternoon. I know Ms. Van Twyver, I'm pointing over there as if she was there, but she usually sits over there. She was very instrumental in helping the technology committee last couple of years, and certainly I don't know if she was interested in serving or not, but just give the board a more FYI that you know, at some point, if there is an interest in one of the board members to participate on it or just to be around, that certainly would not, that'd be an opportunity for collaboration.
Okay. So we're on to new business. Conference request from Dr. Mosley.
Yes. So part of what I always believe is that anytime you are taking on a new position or anytime you're in a position, you should always look to get better. You should always look to improve on what you're doing, improve on being a student, improve on getting better at your profession. So one of the things that I'm asking the board is that I have set a course.
Dr. Mosley, we have a conversation going on. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Improving what I would say my practice as superintendent. So part of what I am requesting from the board is professional development, particularly at the Harvard Institute, where the course would, the title of the course is Harvard Institute for Superintendent and District Leaders. I'll just give a kind of a brief synopsis of the course. It's a 4-day institute that introduces superintendents to the questions that district leaders must consider to achieve excellence for all students, exploring the elements of standard-based reform, framework, clear expectations for students, rigorous curricula aligned to standards, professional development. So many of the things that I envision the strategic plan and many of the curricular initiatives that are going on in the district are connected and tied into this professional development that I'm interested in participating in. This is one of what I would like to say 2 to 3 that I'd like to do each year. And again, it's just like anyone going off to get professional development, you know, superintendents, the assistant superintendents, teachers, everyone needs some form of professional development. So this is my personal growth where I believe that I can always improve what I say my game as superintendent. So that's why I'm putting in the request. Anytime there is a I believe it's over $500 for professional development, it has to go to the board.
Mr. Guarino?
I would like to make a motion to approve Dr. Mosley's request for Harvard Institute for Superintendents of his request of March 9th, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion? Do you want to speak to your motion?
No.
Okay. Ms. Sohensi?
I just wanted some clarification. This is the week after we have a vacation week, so it's during school. And would it be all day or a half day?
It's all day.
All day. But we usually have a vacation at the end of February, then the end of April. So this would be the week that we get back. I was just hoping it was vacation week.
I don't take vacations during the April vacation. I don't take vacations like that. I work all year long. So yes, this district is on vacation. Doesn't mean Dr. Mosley's on vacation. He continues to work.
I understand, but then the stress, the emergencies will be a little bit lower during a vacation week. I'm just wondering, how, you know, juggling it would be easier for you if it was during our vacation week, that's all.
I just want to thank you because I think professional development is important for anybody working in the district. That's one of the things even our paras ask for more PD. So thank you. And looking this over, it does blend in with many of the things we're doing in the district. And it comes at a real nice time doing the strategic plan. So I support this wholeheartedly. Okay. Call the vote.
On the motion, Mr. Mosher?
I say yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons? Yes. Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. The motion carries 6-0.
Okay, and the next item of new business came from Mr. Kaufman. He wanted to discuss parent-teacher organizations. So I'll let you start as to what you see here.
Thank you. So I've been on the board 2 years. I've encountered PTOs twice. Once was at Mount Pleasant School when they came here and were advocating for what turned out to be air conditioning. And the second instance was really through the Finance Committee, where the Charlotte Avenue PTO came through with a playground proposal. Considering we have 17 schools, those folks are on the front line. And I just want to have a conversation to figure out how we as a board can maybe put something more formal in place where we can meet them or at least let them know that some or all of us might be interested in visiting them, but we don't want to take over their meeting. I mean, it was trying to find a way where we can reach out to them but not overwhelm them at the same time. But I see them as a valuable part of how this school operates. I don't think the school district runs well when the parents are not involved, and these people have made that commitment in a huge way. And A, I want to thank them, and B, I want them to know they can reach out to us but I'd also like to see the board find a way to be proactive without intruding on them. So that's what the intent of the discussion is.
I will just say, I see us as looking at the district. What I have found, parent teachers take care of their schools, and when they need us, they find us, they come to us. I've had different people approach me, and as you said, we've heard from Charlotte Ave, we've heard from, somebody else.
Mount Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant, and what happens, they usually take care of things in their school when they have book sales, and I don't think they do bake sales anymore, but they sell candles when they fundraise. And usually what happens when they need something from the board, they will come to us. I think for us to insert ourselves into the operation of the school and the parents, the teachers, I think that might be beyond our scope.
I just wanted to have
Okay.
a conversation. And I was clear about not wanting to intrude.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, discussion March 14th update, and I think that's going to have to be in non-public. And I have one new business. We have to name a policy chair, and I would like to nominate or appoint Heather Raymond as the chair of the policy, as Mr. Mosier, I was going to say Mosley, Mosier had to step down. So I'm looking for some type of approval from the board, just as we voted on them at the organization meeting, for Ms. Raymond to be the chair of the policy committee.
I second that.
You want to vote? On the vote to appoint Heather Raymond as policy chair, Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Ms. Timmons?
Yes.
Ms. Hohensie?
Yes.
Mr. Guarino votes yes. The motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Mrs.
Okay.
Oden?
Public comment.
I just want to ask a question, point of order. I don't know that the March 14th update I never requested it being non-public.
No, I think for some of the safety issues, it needs to be.
Well, can we have a discussion and go into non-public when we deal with safety? I think there's a lot to be discussed around this that has nothing to do with safety. And I think that should be in public.
I think there is some safety concerns that I don't think the public should know about. I think if there are some, I think for the sake of this particular issue, because of the nature of it, certainly going into non-public, having that discussion, and then if there's some things that the board comes up with that they feel comfortable sharing in public, I think that would be appropriate. But I would strongly recommend that because of the sensitivity of this event, and because of we want to support the students and make sure that things are safe. The recommendation would be to go into non-public.
I just have to disagree. I think 90% of the conversation is not about security. It's about the event. It's about the preparation. It's about how the kids, there's a lot of discussion that is not, I just happen to disagree with you, and I think it should be done in public.
Okay. Okay.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
If we went into non-public, we'd have to go in for a reason. I guess safety is a concern, but there's a lot of policy issues, and those we couldn't discuss those in non-public. Anything to deal with the event that had to do with policy, that would have to be done in public.
Attorney Bolton is here. He's going to go into non-public, so I'm sure that all of that will be covered, and that will take care of us legally, that if something should not be discussed in non-public, it won't be.
Okay.
So we will be going into non-public. under RSA 91A3I, 2I, consideration of matters relating to the preparation for and the carrying out of emergency functions, including training to carry out such functions developed by local, state safety officials that are directly intended to thwart a deliberate act that is intended to result in widespread or severe damage to property or widespread injury to loss of life. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Mrs. Oden?
Yes.
So if we do this way, then public comment might be in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or an hour from now. So if there's someone who might want to speak in a public comment, we would be holding them hostage for a while. I
Okay.
don't know if we want to do that.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So we could go into non-public after board member comments, public comments. Okay, I'm sorry. Anybody have public comments?
Adam Marcoux, 4 Jalori Lane. I'm president of the Nashua Teachers Union, if you didn't know. With tomorrow being snow day number 8, I'm wondering how many of you have heard from people looking if we could reconsider adding time. If I had enough hair to pull out, I might. But it's already started. It started Sunday when the weather was looking like it was going to snow. So just wanted to throw that out there. Be more than willing to discuss that with anyone who wants to discuss it. And I was reviewing that fund table requesting information, and I would be more than happy to discuss my salary with anyone who's interested in that and those numbers.
Not interested.
Would you be doing that at the budget meeting on Wednesday, please? Because that's when I would like to have it discussed.
So I don't answer to the school board. And as an employee of the school district, I take direction from the superintendent when I'm employed and from 1,500 members when I'm not employed. So Mr. Donovan's well-versed in my salary and how the union reimburses the school district for said salary as negotiated in Article 12 of the teacher's contract. If you need further information, I'm sure Mr. Donovan or myself could provide that for you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. So now we'll go into non-public under 91A3.